Okay, so welcome, guys. It's really nice to virtually meet you and be on this platform to speaking about this new startup, HiDef. Obviously, I will ask you guys to introduce yourselves, but
Good to be here, man.
Our pleasure for sure. You mind just spending a few moments just introducing yourselves to everyone?
Sure. I'm Anthony Castoro. I'm the CEO and co-founder at HiDef, and got actually three co-founders with me. But on the call today, obviously we've got Rick Fox, and we have two other founders, Jace Hall, and Dr. David Washington, who I think would have liked to have been here, but you got half the crew,
Yeah,
so
thanks,
we're going to have
Anthony.
some fun
I'm Rick
today.
Fox, co-founder. Jason, Dr. Washington at HiDef. I come from a media, sports, gaming, and entertainment background. Honored to be working with these men to bring technology, games, and culture to the masses, but also to lead in the conversation around diversity and the possibility of people that have had less opportunity in the past having more of an opportunity in the future to do exactly what these great men have done so successfully for so many years in the game industry, Anthony and Jace in particular, and Dr. David Washington and myself are here to support that mission as well.
That's really great. Thank you guys so much for the introduction. So yeah, we will just get straight into the question. The very first being something that you both mentioned. What got you started in gaming? That question, we're asking both personally, what's your experience in gaming, and also professionally or publicly, if you may.
Rick, you want to go first?
Give a shortened version since I'm the least experienced in game development, but I am probably one of the most. I'm older than Anthony, so I am the most experienced in gameplay, meaning that I started at a younger age. Anthony's played more games than me.
That doesn't mean he's better. I'm just saying.
But I started. I cut my teeth on an Atari back in the day as a kid in the islands of the Bahamas. And that really was where I found my competitive fire as an individual in life, competing against myself, competing against the Atari friends, and I carried that on throughout my life in high school, college, and into the pros. It was a release for me. It's where I found a lot of joy, and then I connected through games with my son, and in spending the time with my son, his desire wasn't to be a professional athlete like myself. He wanted to be an Anthony Castoro. He wanted to be a Jace Hall. He wanted to make video games. And so the pleasure I have of being able to introduce him to the likes of these men whose stories need to be told. They've been paving the way for young men like my son for years now. And so it's an honor just to be no longer just on the gaming esports side of the industry where I entered games by building an esports organization, but discovering how the game industry worked through these guys' eyes, and then the offering of us starting this company together to actually make games was a real exciting opportunity. I wanted to transition into and make the next phase of my love for games.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, actually, for me, similar, starting with the Atari. That's the 2600, first console I remember having in my house. But also, my mom is an author, and so I remember her getting a Tandy computer back in the day, and my dad used to, and they had these giant, I think 10.5-inch floppy disks or whatever, right? And when she wasn't writing on the computer, he used to write little programs like Worm, and the life simulation where the little cells have a chance to replicate or not and things. And he would show that to me, and I had no idea what the hell he was doing. But I was always around it. And then he got a PC, and my brother and I used to, fight over the one PC in the house. It was a PC Junior, I think, was the first one. And I still remember the rough wooden chair that we had to sit on there. And I'm left-handed, and for the longest time, like every time one of us was using the computer, I would move the mouse from the left side to the right side, and so I was around PC gaming a lot, and I grew up as a more of a PC than a console. I didn't get a Nintendo like all my friends, but I also learned a lot about, and got a little more technical, I think, because I had to learn about like auto exec bat and config sys and all this stuff just to get certain games running. You had to like set up the computer to boot up differently, right? And so I started to learn about memory allocation and command line interfaces, and growing up, I actually wanted to be like my mom, like a writer or make movies, and I had done some acting as a kid. But I was in Texas, and movies were made in California. And when I got to college at the University of Texas, I distinctly remember going down into the lab because I didn't have my own computer at the time, and they had these like a row of Macs, and there was a long line of people wanting to use the Macs, and I was a PC guy, right? And so then in the room there's this like giant, like it was something out of a movie. It was like all these tables with these giant 21-inch monitors, right? CRT monitors with like these like crazy like screensavers on them, and laser mice with these gold mouse pads. And I asked the person who managed the lab, like, what are those? Because there's no one on them. And they're like, oh, those are Unix machines. Nobody knows how to use those, right? It's like Solaris or whatever. And so I'm like, I'm going to learn how to use that. First of all, I didn't want to wait in line for a Mac. And second of all, it looked amazing. I couldn't believe nobody was on that thing. And so I went and got a Unix account, and self-taught basically how to use the Unix system, the command lines, and found out, and that was a direct connection to the internet in the very early 90s. And there are games. There are already games, right? Every time there's a computer, there's a game. Like, doesn't matter, any kind of computing device, someone's going to make a game for it, right? And so by sort of having to dive in and sort of learn a lot about computers from that perspective, I got online, met my now wife back then on the internet relay chat, and still have a lot of friends there, and got inspired to start a business in the video game space. So I know that was a long story, but ultimately I met a lot of really technical or creative people that I wouldn't have met because they're all turned out all over the country, sometimes all over the world, in that sort of burgeoning early internet. And I dropped out of college. There's no place to go in college where I could learn to make games. Dropped out of college, started a video game company, and never looked back. And I was inspired by games like Wing Commander. Really loved space games, X-Wing and TIE Fighter and those games. And I was in Austin, Texas. So I eventually got a job at Origin and got to work on some of the earliest online games, some of the early MMOs. I was doing MUDs in college. Got to work on Ultima Online, eventually became lead designer on Ultima Online, and then a producer, worked on Star Wars Galaxies as a lead systems designer. And because of all that online knowledge, by the time the 2000s rolled around, I was that guy that knew online, and I ended up at headquarters at EA in Redwood Shores and got to work on Battlefield 2 and the pre-production for Battlefield 3, and usually in the live services capacity, but it gave me exposure to AAA, and got to do a whole bunch of work in Asia early on because of what was happening with online games, PC games, and that actually led me to moving to England. So I left EA and became director of director of online at Codemasters Online Gaming. I lived in Warwick and drove to that barn that is so famous at Codemasters, and so I've had the opportunity and I've had a startup. I left, I went back to the States and did a startup, that eventually was VC backed, called Heatwave Interactive. Learned about social games, web games. Went back to EA as the director of mobile games. Created a mobile game studio there. And I've worked at game engine companies, and most recently I was at Daybreak Games as the head of general manager of H1Z1 and PlanetSide, and that's how I met Rick and Jace, two of our co-founders. So look, it was a kind of a long, rambling experience, but really it was always about what's exciting, what's interesting about how games can connect people and tell stories, and blending the creative and the technical. And now you can go to school and get a degree in making video games, which is amazing. And a lot of people don't realize that that's a real career path. And that's one of the things that we're excited about, because as minorities in the space, you don't see a founding team that looks like us, right? And we have a certain perspective on the world, because of our backgrounds and our experiences, and they're all very different. But for biracial founders who have a certain view on, like, people should be included in different perspectives, create new opportunities. The HiDef is sort of the culmination of all that work that I've done to gain the experience I need to be able to go out and build a world-class organization like we're doing.
No, thank you so much, honestly. As I said before, it's a pleasure to meet you guys, especially knowing that you guys actually have a love for gaming, as opposed to it just being a profit-based interest. And even just what you were touching on, those last elements as far as culture, and what we represent as far as the color of our skin, actually leads to our second question. So you guys can answer this question, which is, what exactly is HiDef? And how does it create or contribute to culture? How does it interact with the elements of diversity, especially in today's age?
As usual, Rick and I are going to bat the ball around, see who wants to answer this one first. Rick, you want me to dive in? You want to go first? So look, my feelings about this are the same as my feelings for, like, just running a company, which is everything we do affects other people, right? So every decision we make about who we hire, what game we make, who makes it, who are our partners, all those things, matter, and they impact people. But I think our way of approaching that is always about positivity and about, creating opportunities and harvesting the best ideas. So the company is really built around the mission of contributing to culture and society in a positive way while opening up powerful new channels for creators, right? And one of the problems we have in the space and in the game industry that we're way behind in others versus, like, TV and film, is we don't get enough people into the roles of actually contributing into that ecosystem to know how to do what we do, to then go off and create a company to do it. Because it's one thing to just make a game and be successful at that, which is really hard. It's another thing to create a company to make games and do that at the same time successfully, right? So, specifically what we're looking to do is create opportunities for a broad field of creators and tech innovators of all kinds of backgrounds. And we mean that, like, for everyone, right? It's not just for black folks. It's not just for certain brown folks. It's not for white folks, right? It's actually about just, like, how can we give people the opportunity with all this amazing technology around us, to contribute in an interesting way. So, we have a little internal motto, play it forward, which is, built on the concept of pay it forward. Everything that we do, we hope has an influence on other people to do things in a similar way, right? So even though we're not talking about what game or games we're working on right now, what we can say is, when you do see them, hopefully it'll be really obvious that there's a real intersection between video games and the rest of popular culture. And it's been that way for a while, but it's taken a while for everyone to realize that. And in some ways, COVID has really helped people realize that, because when they couldn't leave the house, everyone turned to games, right? It's one of the ways they can connect with each other. And so we see that the way that games can affect, the world and our communities in a positive way as an opportunity for us to contribute to society in a positive way, both by the games that we make, the people we work with, and the games that we make people for.
I think that was well said. I would just add that so much that drives, I think our company is about, passing the baton, passing the baton to others to continue to expand on a vision that they may have of what is possible in gaming and what is possible creativity wise. Also opening the doors for consumers to feel as though they can be more than just the consumer, they can be the creator. So creating games which also allow the consumer to impact culture as well. We've seen that through social media platforms. We've seen it start to now pop up through games as well, where within the game opportunities, consumers are actually using the game to create and tell stories, create and monetize ways for themselves. And I think through that, through platforms like that, not only will they impact culture along with us, we're kind of we're giving them a stage. And so much of what we're excited about at our company is creating these stages, these platforms, and these game opportunities, these universes for community to grow, for voices to be heard, and for the opportunity of those individuals that love games to become a vehicle for them to also create a way of monetization as well. So that to me is handing the power over to the consumer and those that love games.
No, that all sounds great. Thank you so much, honestly. And actually, that something that you mentioned as far as not being able to speak too much on it, and even John himself said it's basically classified. But if I may ask, for those who would want to know, as far as gaming itself, what aspects, or what platforms, or even projects is HiDef working on currently, or will be going on to work on?
Yeah, so I mean, we can't say exactly what we're doing. We're still flying under the radar from that perspective. But what I can say is that we're leading with mobile, but we're designing and planning for all kinds of platforms. And even though we haven't announced what that flagship game is yet, we're excited about getting to the point where we can, because we know. As we've been on this journey, going through the process of raising the capital and putting the prototypes together and doing all the things that you have to do, the reaction that we've gotten from people who know has been stellar. And it's why, we're so excited about the opportunity that we're building. And it's also why we're able to recruit the teams that we're able to recruit. So if you've seen some of the announcements of some of the folks that have joined the company after the founders, there's a reason for that. They saw what we were doing, they saw what we're about and how we're doing it, and they were like, "I believe in this. I'm going to come, jump in with you guys." So, our excitement around the flagship game is related to all the things we just talked about with culture and about the opportunity to bring lots of different creative voices to the table, giving them a megaphone and letting creators participate in that ecosystem, just as Rick was talking about. So, and the other aspect of that, and I know work with other organizations, really excited about too. We're building a self-publishing. As we do these things, org, and we have to build teams. That's going to create a lot of jobs. Work with other organizations. We're building a self-publishing open new path org and some internal groups, but that's going to create a lot of jobs and opportunities. That'll hopefully open new pathways for people that didn't have that opportunity before.
Without being too singularly focused on those that have not maybe been seen or heard in the past in these opportunities, I think it's important, though, not only as we lead, to lead as a visual example of what is possible, but to also reach down and actually lift up, I think, those that really just need a start, and in a lot of times, just even being, it's one thing to send a resume out. It's another thing to, so much of, I think, the industry has existed on a close knit, small network of people that are used to working together or knowing each other. So breaking in,
Yeah, who you know, right?
yeah, it's who you know, and that's not to judge or to disparage companies that have really turned to the people they happen to have in their network. It's just to say that we think there's a lot of talent grown, who tell their own stories or to contribute to stories with a point of view that have aspired to. I don't necessarily have seen or gotten to know in my traverses through the industry, and I've been fortunate enough to be backstage of some of these game companies for a long time. I took my 12-year-old son to Blizzard, and thankfully enough, at the age of 12, he got to experience what it meant to walk around a game development house and shop, and he looked for people that looked like him, and at that time, some 12, 14 years ago, that wasn't the case for him. But I must commend Riot Games, Mark Merrill, who's one of our supporters, who, when I spent time with League of Legends, I got to meet some 40 odd game developers and staff from Riot Games who look like me, who look like my son, who my son had no idea worked there. And so, to me, more podcasts like this, more opportunities to showcase the stories of people like Anthony and Jace, or the people like yourself who are in games, in tech, understand the space, or driving it and leading it, that they can reach out and have a conversation with, that they can find and now know who to talk to, because then they become our network. They become a part of our network that once we know who they are and we know their interests, we can then be an advocate in a resume checkbox for them. So that's what's exciting to me, really, quite frankly, because games have been my life. I play them to this day, 3 hours a night. They're what I do, and now they're what I make. I want others to not only just play them, I want them to make them as well.
Honestly, thank you guys so much. I'm just hearing these things not just as someone who's moderating this panel, but as a gamer, as a consumer, even as a gamer of a gamer of color. Everything you guys have touched on just has me excited about the future of HiDef. So yeah, we'll end it there, and just want to thank you guys so much for being with us and everything that you've explained. Honestly, you've got interests going higher right now, I can imagine. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you more again, especially as time goes on. We see much of the things you release and the collaborations that you have. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope it was interesting for people who want to make games or be in the space, and feel free to reach out.